The information found in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hi, and welcome to the Women in Depth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lourdes Viado. Join me as we explore the inner lives of women, their struggles, fears, hopes, and dreams. We'll go beneath the surface and take a deeper look at what is hidden, unknown, uncertain, and uncomfortable. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. We all have hopes, dreams, and goals, and often, even with our very best intentions, it seems as if these dreams elude us and slip further out of reach. Today, my guest is Nicole Liloia, and she is going to talk to us about how self-sabotage impacts various areas of our life. Because not only, do we have goals and dreams and aspirations, but we are also in relationships. We are parents, we are friends, we are involved in the world wearing different hats, and self-sabotage shows up in all of these areas. And I'm going to hypothesize that I'm sure Nicole will either confirm or say, no, that doesn't happen. I'm guessing that if we are self-sabotaging in one area of our life, we're probably doing it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Nicole. So before I bring Nicole on and she can share her wisdom and expertise with you, let me tell you a little bit about her. Nicole Liloia provides strategy and mentorship to women entrepreneurs who want to scale their business and income through multiple income streams. After suffering severe burnout in the nonprofit world and refusing to ever return to a 9-to-5, she took time to travel and volunteer in South America. Nicole started her first business, a counseling practice, when she got back and slowly added in more income streams. She now works with women business owners to help them stop wasting time and start making more money. Nicole got her master's in social work at Columbia University and is obsessed with entrepreneurship, women becoming wealthy, apothic wine, and never misses a Taco Tuesday. Hi, Nicole, and welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
I am so excited to speak with you today because, when you first emailed with me and we were trying to figure out a topic, it was really hard for me to pick. And even now reading your bio, I'm thinking, oh, that would be really good. And so I just am excited because I know that you have so much to offer to women in general. I know your focus is entrepreneurship. However, the skills and the strategies that you teach really benefit women in all areas of their life.
Yes, absolutely. And, I think when you have a business, it really is so tied into your personal life or even a career you love, right? Or a job you love. I think everything can get tied in together. So no matter where the sabotage comes up, personal or business, right? Or work or career, it all affects each other anyway.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because I've noticed for myself that if I'm doing something that's really not helpful, that'll be a kind word for me or my family or my business, I can generally find myself doing that in other areas. So yes, absolutely. What we're going to talk about today is something that can really benefit women if they can take this information and begin to make some shifts in the way they perceive, the way they respond, the way they think. I wanted to start, Nicole, with you have a really fascinating background. And I want to touch on that a little bit because it's just too fascinating to just kind of go ahead and go right to the how we sabotage. So I just wanted to, ask you, so you were completely burned out at one point and you decided you were done and you weren't going to do that ever again. And then you took some time away from all of that and stepped into a whole new place, literally a different space as far as, where you were mentally and even with your emotions, I can imagine. So can you share how that experience is connected to how women find themselves in these sabotaging places in their lives? I'm guessing that there has to be some kind of connection.
Yeah, well, I think that, when we get stuck in areas of our life that we're not happy with. And mine at the time was work, right? I was working a 9 to 5. I was in the nonprofit world, and there really was what I felt was a lack of control because it was a very bureaucratic system. So it's not like I was able to make change, unfortunately, at my level at the place of work. And I'm sure that happens to so many people, right? Where we want things to change. We try to problem solve at work and it kind of gets shut down. Our ideas get shut down. And I think it's very easy at that point for sure to sort of have that self-sabotage come into play and really let it then spread into our personal life, right? Where we feel out of control in one area like work or unhappy. And then it kind of moves over to our personal life, right? Because it's hard to separate even when you go home at the end of the day or leave the office. So I think for sure, that's definitely one thing that happens is carrying over one experience in one part of our lives to other areas of our lives and giving it more meaning.
And so when you came back from, this time away and you started your first practice, you started your first business, which was a counseling practice. Was it from this time in South America that you brought back with you that really was part of the shift for you in how you began to, navigate your work, your career, your life?
Yeah. So I think that what happened was, first of all, when I came back, I kind of was like shell shocked a little bit from the experience because it was just such a different culture. I was in Venezuela for almost 3 months. It was such a different culture from where I had been before working in New York City, living in New York City. And I think just even taking that time off, it really felt so scary to me because it kind of went against everything that I knew, which was like go to school and then work at the same job forever.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I wish I could say that I started a business right away, but I really was almost shell shocked and honestly kind of had a few different part-time jobs and just kind of pieced things together because I just really didn't even know what I wanted. I had no clarity. And then when I did set up my business, I think the thing is actually I recreated the 9 to 5 world because I set it up where it was very rigid, where it has to be in the office at the same time, on the same days, and see the same clients at the same time. And if I didn't go to work, I couldn't get paid. I couldn't make money if I didn't see clients. So I had accidentally gone back to that. And I think that is, a self-sabotage is really repeating those patterns and not even noticing it, kind of just having no awareness of it and not being present or mindful in our choices.
Yeah, that reminds me of, just to kind of make this maybe relatable to women who, are not working or are not entrepreneurs. And I'm sure you see this too, Nicole. I think, in relationships, you see, or we do this and we see our loved ones
right.
and friends leave one relationship and then they go into another one. It's a different person, maybe a different location, but then
exactly
you see the same patterns that were in the previous relationship.
Sure. And I mean, I did come back and like I said, I didn't start a business right away. I did get other jobs. And, a lot of the situations that played out were the same for sure. And then I even did it myself in my own, when it was under my control. So I think for sure for people, do you have one dynamic at work with your boss? And then do you come and play that out with your partner or your kids? So I think just see where are things repeating when you've gone to work and maybe you made a mistake and maybe you have a not supportive leader or manager and they've sort of gone off on you or made you feel ashamed of your error. And then you've gone home and you've yelled at your child, right, for not doing their homework the right way. It's just kind of reversed, but it's the same pattern.
So as you have done your own work on yourself and you have implemented meaningful change into your life, what are some ways that you've noticed that women sabotage themselves? And perhaps this can be what you see with clients you work with, in your own life, but, in general. And also, again, how does this show up in different areas?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest sabotages, better to think of it, that I experience is procrastination. I honestly was just talking about this yesterday a few years back. I was really unhappy in my living situation in the apartment I was living at, but I just procrastinated moving. And, there was always a good reason to procrastinate. Wait to save more money, wait to find a better place, wait till better weather. You know what I mean? Every week there was a new reason to procrastinate. And I think that sometimes that happened too, even in my job. I would procrastinate working on certain projects until the last minute. Even in, relationships, right? With your partner, you may procrastinate a conversation that you have because you just don't want to deal with it in the moment, and things build up, right? What happens? Problems get bigger. They don't suddenly just vanish on their own as much as we kind of hope they will.
Yeah, I see this with clients that sometimes it's just procrastinating with your life. It's almost this sense of not happy where you are, but not taking action to make any changes.
Yes. And I am like a master procrastinator, and I know myself too. So sometimes I can trick myself more. And, when I was choosing to leave that one job that I was unhappy at, I really procrastinated as much as I could. And I had it under the guise of like needing enough hours to get a license, right? So, there were several of us at the job that were unhappy. And I actually, did leave when I got that license. I gave notice I couldn't take it anymore. But other people who said they were going to leave suddenly stayed, found a reason to procrastinate it more. So it was interesting to see too, like me leaving and how that was different than people who stayed. And the situation never got better.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation with someone the other day that getting going is going to be hard and uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And scary, and you don't know how it's going to work out.
Absolutely.
Where you are, it's really hard and uncomfortable, and you already know it's going to happen. So,
right.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see it play out because you're always like, did I miss anything? Was it just me? So it was kind of cool and sad to see when I left that situation and people still stayed in it, that it never got better.
Yeah.
It just continued to deteriorate. So, I think for people who procrastination is one of the ways they self-sabotage, like just thinking it'll get better, or, creating a story about when it's going to be a better time, when it's going to be a better time to ask for that raise, right? To talk to your boss or have a difficult conversation or ask for a promotion or search for a new job. I think that there is no perfect time.
So why do you think we procrastinate?
First of all, it's hard. It means doing something different, right? Whether it's like looking for a job, going on interviews when you haven't done that in a long time, whether it's if you address something with your partner, they're going to address stuff that you do and you're going to have to face your place in it, right? It means change, and we never know what's going to happen with change.
Yeah. And so what are some steps if someone's listening and they're saying, yes, that is so me. If they're going to implement some shifts today, what would you suggest for procrastination?
Well, first of all, I think like really break it down. I think sometimes we give ourselves like huge goals. It wasn't like 1 week I decided I was leaving my job and the next week I was like, I'm going to go away, right? Like I'm going to go and leave the country after I give my notice in 2 weeks. I gave myself a deadline. And then even months before the deadline, I started making other plans. So instead of just making the plan to quit, I also made the plan for what I would do next so that I wouldn't suddenly have nothing set up and it would hold me accountable.
And so it's almost as if you're making a change. That's what you're procrastinating about, to see it as a process or a series of steps versus I'm going to end my relationship and move, or I'm going to leave this job and look for something else. So, because I think also when we look at it that way, it's really overwhelming.
Absolutely. And it's so funny that as we're talking about this, because yesterday was the 1 year anniversary of me moving to a new apartment. And it was a really big decision for me to move. And it was one that I procrastinated for a long time, like years. I wasn't happy there. But, I built my story of why I needed to stay there and everything and stuck to that. So then when it was time to move, I really didn't move into it gradually, right? Like I basically did it over like a 1 month period, which is very fast for a move and a big move, which I would say like I moved from like the suburbs to city. So it was a big adjustment. It wasn't just like, a new apartment building a couple blocks away.
Right.
And, so this is a bad example of procrastination because I procrastinated so much on the official decision. And then when I made the official decision, I just rushed into it. I didn't set up a process. I didn't give myself 3 months. I gave myself like 1 month. I found the new place. And I didn't really research the area I moved. I didn't research the neighborhood. I didn't really prep myself at all. So when I moved, it was like I went into shock, to be I rushed it. I had rushed it, unfortunately.
You had mentioned this earlier, and I think, I know I was thinking about this too at some point while you were talking about how procrastination can be sneaky in that we can tell ourselves stories about what it is and not see it for what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how can a person begin to discern if, okay, this is normal procrastination that everyone does, when they're thinking of a big change?
Right.
Or how do you know when it's gotten to a place where you're stuck?
Well, one, if your friends are tired of you talking about the same thing. If you see them start to change the subject quickly, because you've had that same conversation a million times, which, I know this sounds funny, but it's really true, right?
I just thought of something else. If you have some really good friends, it's such a good friendship that you can be really, really honest with each other. You could go ask them.
Right. How long have I actually been
tired of me talking about this?
Yeah. And, I'm that kind of friend too when people do that. Like when I left that job, some of my friends were still there. I couldn't take it anymore, right? Because I was being dragged into that same cycle, even though I wasn't there. I started sending them like job descriptions because they'd say like, there's no jobs out there. And I was like, what do you mean? And I just like couldn't take it. So if you've been talking about a job change or moving and your friends are sending you like apartment listings or job descriptions, it might be the sign.
Okay. And also, if you've been talking to your friends about how unhappy you are in a relationship and they are now, sending you blog articles to read or telling you about different books or saying, right, let's go out this evening, have a good time, maybe that's a sign too.
Exactly.
All right. So what are some other sabotaging ways that we can find ourselves in?
Another one is shiny object syndrome, which is when you keep getting distracted from whatever you're working towards by something else, right? So maybe you are saving up to buy a new car and then you see another car, or you get distracted by a new computer and you're like, I'll save up for the car later. Let me just get this computer first, or let me get a new living room set, right? And you kind of just get distracted by other things. And it doesn't always have to be like actual objects, but it could be other goals, other situations, just other distractions that seem like the cure for whatever's going on.
So what do you think that's about? Why do we, you're going down this path to your, whatever it is that your destination is. And, we have all these little trails that lead off the main path. And why is it that when we know that we want to reach this destination, do we so easily get distracted? What drives that?
Because I think it is like we've been talking about, is it takes work to make change, right? It's a process. And we kind of hope there's always like a quicker, faster cure out there. Mm-hmm. Or like something else just grabs our attention.
Like you said, it's work, and moving towards our goals or making changes, it's hard. Mm-hmm. And it's uncomfortable and it's scary. And, there are a lot of things that happen that can get in our way or block us. And so when you have other experiences, people, goals, activities seem much more enjoyable, easy, fun, or maybe this goal here, which, I know I have this other goal, but this goal might be less of a struggle, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Like so many of us have gone to college or gone on to grad school or gone for continuing education, and maybe we're working towards our master's degree or a doctorate or something. And all of a sudden we see something else, like we see a quick certification program or we see a different job where we wouldn't need that. Right. And it's easy to kind of talk ourselves into something different, into a distraction.
Another way that I want to share this with our listeners is I think even like in relationships, when relationships get hard, For a lot of us, it throws us off because we don't want it to be, and we can tend to look at struggles in a relationship as this means it's not a good relationship, or this is going to be way too much work. There's going to be a lot of uncomfortable feelings. So, those different shiny object syndrome can be another person. It can be getting busy with work, focusing more on your kids versus your partner, when it's the marriage and it's your relationship with your partner that actually needs the focus.
Absolutely, for sure.
So what are some ways that you recommend that we can work with shiny object syndrome?
I think really just starting to notice, is this a distractor? Is this something that's going to help you long-term? Is it short-term? Has this been a pattern for you before where you get off track when you're working towards a goal?
Those are great questions. It ties into what you said earlier, Nicole, about the repeating.
Yes.
When have I been here before? When have I done this before?
Yeah, it's all about that self-awareness and having that conversation with yourself. And I think it's really about letting go of the judgment, because if we judge ourselves, we start to defend what we're doing and find reasons for it, which isn't helpful in the long term. And it's changing habits, right? Like these are just habits that most of us have been doing for years. So we're not even really present in the situations.
All right. So we have procrastination. We have shiny object syndrome. What is next?
We could go on all day, but the next one that we should really talk about is overwhelm and always being busy.
Oh, this is a good one, Nicole.
Yeah. The truth is that it can really be a self-sabotage to work on our goals, right? When we constantly keep our schedules booked out.
Guilty.
Yes, exactly. We're taking on new responsibilities and new things.
Yeah, I can see that. That's so easy to do, right? I mean, it's very seductive, and I think it's sneaky because you're looking at, I'm building a business for my family. So it seems really legit, everything that you're doing.
Right. Or it's like, we'll work on these relationship issues after tax season or whatever.
Yeah.
After the kids go back to school, things will just kind of work themselves out. But by then, especially when you have something going on that you need to make a change, if you're overwhelmed or busy and getting burnt out, it's just going to really make it so much harder.
So how can someone begin to tell them, when is it too much?
Well, I think basically if it's affecting another part of your life, right? So if there's something that you're avoiding changing or something you need to do. So it's not, we are going to be busy, we are going to be overwhelmed, but it's more in the sense that it's actually like it's sabotaging you from something else, right? So that's where you want to just be careful about it. And I think that honestly, a lot of us are really high achieving, perfectionistic women, right? And I think that deep down, we know when it's like real busyness, right? And it's also an excuse to avoid something. So I think just kind of pay attention to your inner voice. But then I think the other piece that this ties into for those of us that are high achieving and perfectionistic is that we want to only do something when we can do it perfectly.
That is such a good point. That is so true.
So if we're like, well, we're busy, so we don't have 10 hours in our week to get it done and get it perfect, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or to devote this time to fixing this issue, to improving this issue, then we're not going to bother. But that's not true. Start with an hour.
That's a really good suggestion. I see myself do that all the time, Nicole, where I don't have the time to do this to the quality that I want.
Right.
I can't do it.
Exactly. I hear that from my clients all the time. And I'm like, but you have 15 minutes, right?
I don't know if you are familiar with this episode, but it was episode 87, and I had Yvonne Talley on, and she talked about her book and her work around busyness and the overscheduled woman. And she talked about there were 5 different types of overscheduled women. And it was really, it's interesting because this ties into that and how it can be really deceiving because we are entrepreneurs, we are high achievers, we care deeply about the people in our lives. And so we can easily fall into a trap of doing and being continually active. So we have procrastination, shiny object syndrome, overwhelm, and always being busy. What is another form of sabotage that you've noticed?
Well, one that I would love to talk about is actually one that I've kind of labeled myself. It's not really out there, but it's a pattern that I've seen, even when I was a therapist, just working with busy working women and moms. And now I see it again with entrepreneurs. And I've seen it with all kinds of women, to be honest.
Oh, I'm excited. Do tell.
I call it rethink, right? And it's really interesting because I see it with women who just have like a lot of responsibility, which woman isn't that, right? And I don't know if you've ever suffered from chronic decision making, like every day you have decision fatigue because you're making so many decisions, right? You're making decisions for who to interview on the podcast. You're making decisions about how to set up your schedule. You're making decisions on what to eat, what your family should eat, what to wear, all of that. And it's just really overwhelming. And I've seen women make decisions and choose something that's going to help them hit their goal. And they almost forget it, right? Like they forget that they've made that decision. And then a few weeks later, they go through that stressful decision-making process again.
Can you give some examples?
So, for example, with one of my clients, she juggles many roles and she's a writer, she's a consultant in a corporate place. She has personal clients on the side. So she's doing everything. And we will sort of like make a decision about her letting go of one of her jobs, right? Or one of her writing jobs that maybe just isn't worth it, that doesn't bring in much income. And then all of a sudden, like we'll talk a month later and she's still doing it. And it's almost like she even forgot she made that decision. And she's like, I'm so overwhelmed again, And I think it's that sort of nervousness about moving forward that it's almost like a little bit of a blackout or almost like a little bit of a trauma incident, right? Where we totally forgot we even do it. And we put ourselves through that whole process all over again about what should we decide to do rather than kind of just going and taking action on it.
Wow, that's really powerful. I mean, because it is like a blind spot or a blackout, or like you said, it's just because you don't forget it. It seems like, your unconscious mind like puts it in another room.
Sort of like that we forgot that we're going to make progress on it or that we've come to like a decision about it because it's so scary. Of course, the problem doesn't go away because we haven't taken action on it. And then we even forget we made the decision to move in a different direction.
Wow. I don't know if this is connected, so you can let me know what you think. I'm wondering if this has anything to do with something I see in myself. And I see in clients and friends and colleagues, but you make a decision to engage in something that is going to be better for your business or your life or, whatever. And maybe you even take the steps. I'll give an example. You invest in a course, sign up for classes at a studio, maybe like yoga classes or something.
Right.
Or you get that book on how to eat more healthily or pack healthier lunches for your kids.
Right.
And then that's about it.
Yes. And then I think it takes it a little bit to the next level where you're like, where somebody mentions the book 3 months later and you're like, I think I bought that. I don't even know where that is. Right. And it literally is like this black hole in your brain. It's totally vanished. So I've been seeing this a lot. It's really interesting, just for me working with so many women and just seeing this come up for so many women in so many different ways, right? Even if you decide you're going to start going to yoga class and then 3 weeks later, it's like, how was yoga class? And they're like,
right.
Was I supposed to go? And it's like, yes, we had this like full conversation about it. Yeah. And then it starts to come to you, but it really is stressful. First of all, it's really stressful when it's for bigger things, right? Because you end up still doing the same behavior. And then you go through that process, that decision-making process, which is such a drain of energy and time and resources. And especially if it's about something that's stressing you out, you're reliving this traumatic decision over and over again.
So can you talk a little bit more about maybe that's what you're describing is a form of decision fatigue, right?
Yes, like an extension of decision fatigue where you're tired, you make this big decision, and then all of a sudden in a few weeks, it's like it never happened. You never take any action on it, and you don't even remember that you made that decision.
And so now you're dealing with
you're still stuck. The same things are going on.
The shame.
And then you're like still you're going through the process of like making the decision again.
Yeah.
And, that's why I call it rethink because it's like you're rethinking about everything.
Yeah.
And also, it is such a self-sabotage because it's keeping you stuck, right? It's keeping you in your safe place. It's usually a decision about something that's going to be good for you, or it's going to take you to the next level, or maybe it's even like a decision about something really big in a relationship, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it just doesn't allow you to kind of go further in life.
So what can someone do about that?
I think it's just really starting to notice. I mean, I think one, like, get support, right? Whether it's a therapist or whatever it is, a support system. Make sure you have a support system, and really a neutral support system, meaning, you know, sometimes your friends just can't cut it anymore. You can't use them. Yeah. You can't rely on them for everything, right?
Well, yeah, and you shouldn't rely on anyone for everything. That's a lot of pressure.
Right. Set up some kind of accountability. And sometimes it can't even be your partner, right? Because if you're stressed about something at work and you're constantly bringing it home and it's starting to affect your relationship, sometimes they can't always support you in it either. So if you notice that they're saying, like, I thought we already discussed this, or they're asking you, like, how did it go? And you're like, how did what go? They're like, that conversation you were going to have with your boss. And you're like, oh my gosh. And it's a big decision. It's a bigger decision, right? Typically something that you're really shocked you can't believe you forgot.
Right.
I think it really is making sure you're getting accountability, thinking about, you know, taking some time to journal or process. I think journaling is really helpful for people. What are you afraid of? What's the worst case scenario if you do this thing, right? Clearing out that kind of anxiety, thinking about other times you made big decisions or changes and they turned out okay, and scheduling it into your calendar and doing check-ins.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to do the internal part of this, which is the example you gave of the journaling or any other activity that supports you in being with the feelings, the fears, the thoughts around whatever is keeping you stuck. Because I think that when we don't do that, that avoidance, that is also part of the sabotage. So you really have to do that part. And then after this, there's the taking concrete, tangible action out in the world with support.
Yeah, because I think what's really different about this sabotage, it's not someone who's like, yeah, I'm going to do it, and is really thinking like, no, I'm not going to do it. Their intention was really to do it. They went through the stressful process of making this decision for the next step, and then they just kind of black out on it.
Yeah. When it came time to actually put this into action, the reality of what this action would mean, the feelings that would come with it, perhaps you're concerned with responses from others, you know, suddenly that became really big and real.
Yeah. And it's almost like a disassociation. You know, I'm not really a researcher, but I'd be curious, you know, if it's stronger for people who have had a trauma history, you know, and have had to disconnect or disassociate from certain situations. You know, maybe it might happen more frequently for women who have had that experience, or for in the moment of making that decision feel really, really internally distressed.
So, Nicole, if someone is listening and they are, you know, this is really resonating with them, what are your words of wisdom as far as first steps in beginning to make changes around sabotaging behaviors?
I would say really start to just get clear on what you want. I think a lot of times part of the reason we're able to self-sabotage so easily is we really don't own our goals. We don't really own that picture of like what we want our life to look like. We kind of keep it vague. And as a result, we can't really create that process to make changes because we don't give ourselves any sort of timeline or specific picture of what we're working towards.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost as if you're preparing to go on a trip, but you don't know where you're going. So
exactly.
You don't know what kind of clothes to bring. You don't know if you should drive, if you should fly. You know, just,
right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Nicole, this has been really helpful. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and expertise today with our audience. What is the best way for listeners to get in touch with you, learn more about your work, and perhaps even work with you?
Yeah, well, they can find me at NicoleLiloia.com, and you can book a consult there or just see other ways to get in touch with me through Facebook, Instagram, places like that. And you can also I did create a goal setting guide because I've realized how important it is for women to set clear goals for what they want in their life. And you can actually get a copy of that guide at NicoleLiloia.com/assess, align, action. And that's just really a guide with different journal prompts to really help you get clear on where you want to go next in your life. And I think then when you really are clear on that picture, you'll notice the self-sabotages pop up more frequently. But not identify them all, you'll also be able to overcome them quicker too.
I love that you said that, though, because I think when you begin to understand what self-sabotage is and you figure out, what you can begin to do about it, and when it's coming,
right,
that is actually helpful. It's like knowing that there's going to be a hurricane or a blizzard. Exactly. And you can adjust accordingly.
And when you're consciously working towards a goal, they are going to come up. You know what I mean? They are not avoidable, right? Like, meaning they will come up and then you can deal with them. And that's the way to deal with them. Don't try to skip them because they're going to find you.
And so, Nicole, all of the resources that you mentioned, the goal setting guide, along with your other links to your website, we'll make sure that we include them in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Women in Depth podcast. I hope it brings you a deeper understanding of yourself and others, and that you found some insights that illuminated and inspired. You can follow Women in Depth on Facebook and YouTube, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. And finally, if you enjoy Women in Depth, please share with a friend. Again, thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.